How's it going, everyone? Back with another iteration of Does It Wither Bloom, and it's another set review of Murders at Karlov Manor. Here we're talking about cards from the new set and if they'll impact specifically Black Green Rock and Pioneer. Unfortunately, kind of as a little summary, I feel like the set is not that impactful for BGX. For Black Green Rock specifically, we got a lot of new great tools recently in the previous sets with Mosswood Dread Knight, Sentinel of the Nameless City. So now I guess, beggars can't be choosers, or we can't be too greedy with too many new tools. But there are some that are worth talking about from this set, and we're going to dive deep into it today in this video. So the first card we're going to talk about is actually just a reprint. It's Assassin's Trophy. This is a card that is highly underrated. I think people just kind of dog on this card just because of the fact that it ramps through your opponent and this and that. And, it's just a catch all removal spell in the Pioneer format, right? Like, this is a card that was played in Modern for a while before, Power Creep really just destroyed that format. So this is a nice reprint just because of the fact that this is a card that was like $7, I think, $8 as of right now. And this murders version is like $2. So this will be a nice reprint for everyone that wants to, take on a non-Rakdos mid-range deck. This is just a nice way to make the deck a little bit cheaper. So I really appreciate it. And just kind of a shout out to how playable Trophy is. It's playable. Don't listen to the people that have never played Trophy in Pioneer. It's a good card. Massacre Girl, Known Killer, is a 4-drop, two colorless and 2 black. For a 4/4 with Menace, creatures you control have Wither, so they deal damage with -1/-1 counters. And then the key card of this card is whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, if its toughness was less than 1, draw a card. So essentially, if you have this card in play and in combat, if your creatures actually kill your opponent, then you actually draw a card. This is a card that's really, really interesting. This is a card that I think it will be meta dependent. So of course, in matchups where creatures don't matter, like if our opponents don't play creatures, right, like Blue Eye Control, Lotus, even stuff like Is It Phoenix, where you can't really block or interact with their creatures in combat. Outside of those, like, this card is pretty interesting because if you look at like a deck like an Amalia combo where it's very, very combat heavy, essentially whenever they chump block, you draw a card, which is insane. Um, or even like if we trade, it doesn't always have to be chump blocking. So I think this card is worth testing, maybe as like a one of. I know like previously I've played Archfiend of the Dross. Um, at those slots, and Archfiend is a card that is really bad against Amalia just because of the fact that it gains so much life and you can't race before you move all the oil counters. This is a card that I think pairs well with Shieldred. I don't think you cut Shieldred. Shieldred is just, of course, an insane magic card, and there's like no matchup where you want to board out Shieldred, right? Like, but this card you want to board it out against Blue Eye Control, Lotus Field, Is It Phoenix. So like this is where I could maybe select one copy, maybe two. I'll probably try two as a way just to test it. But the fact that like it's not good against Blue Eye Control, or Is It Phoenix, or I think will be popular before the set printing and even after the set printing or set release. Like I think this is a card that will just really have to depend on how creature heavy your meta is. Pick Your Poison is a 1 green sorcery where each opponent either sacrifices an artifact, an enchantment, or sacrifices a creature with flying. So this is a really cool card. Might not be specifically for Pioneer, but I think this is a card that's more geared towards Modern, where you really, really need the efficiency. 1 mana to have a naturalize is really efficient, so it may as well be very good enough in Pioneer, where it's not bad to be efficient, right? But I really think the sorcery speed is the main drawback for this card. If you compare something like Terra Sunder, the instant speed matters a ton. Being able to like end step, take out a temporary lockdown, take out an Acroan War, get your creature back and block another creature. I think that's where it's really, really, really helpful to have the instant speed, as you know, is most of the cases. Sacrifice is a keyword where it's not good against Rakdos sacrifice, of course, because if they sacrifice an oven, then you have they triggers Mayhem Devil, and or they just have artifacts that they could just sacrifice. They can make treasures, they can make blood tokens. So the edict effects are just not really impactful in that matchup. So I definitely have my reservations about this specific card in Pioneer, but I think this is a card that, like, as the format gets more powerful and things get more efficient, this card gets a lot better. So this is a card that I'm probably not gonna slot in now because I just like Terra Sunder more. Terra Sunder being able to be a 4 mana, exile a Planeswalker because I board against blue white control. Like, that's good. Like, 4 mana to exile a Planeswalker is a good move to play in Pioneer. So I think that showcases the fact that you don't really need to be that efficient as long as you kind of want more versatility in that format. Versus in something like Modern, you need the efficiency. So this is a card that I'll keep my tab on, and if the format ever gets broken and a sorcery speed 1 mana removal spell for an artifact or enchantment, that's an edict. If that's good, then this is a nice tool to have. So this is something that, again, I'm gonna keep a tab on. Nice to have. I'll probably just get a foil or two, and then just have it. And then if I need to slot it in, I already have it. So Underground Mortuary is one of the surveil lands. I don't know if there's a specific name for it, but it constantly tapped. It's a forest and a swamp, and then you surveil 1/1 in ETB. So this is kind of like the same as last card, where it's probably more impactful in Modern than Pioneer, because in Modern you can play one, maybe two of these, and then just like whenever you have an unused mana, and you have a fetch land, you can just fetch for this, and then just filter the top card of your deck. So I think in Modern is where this card has a huge impact, just because of the fact that it's not that it's free, because it's a card that you don't necessarily want to naturally draw it, but it's kind of like that Bajuka Ball card or the Golgari Rot Farm card, right? Where you kind of want to be able to tutor for this type of effect at will, especially with something like Elvish Reclaimer. And this is a card that pairs nicely with Elvish Reclaimer because if you surveil land in the graveyard, it's one step closer to pumping the Reclaimer into a 3/4. That being said, in Pioneer, this is a card that is no different than like the Scryland, right? And the Scrylands are not playable. This is a card that if people do start playing, Beseiju gets a lot worse just because they can tutor for it, and then if they if they don't need the mana, they can tutor for it, kind of play tapped, and then just surveil one, and it's like free value there. So this is a card where makes Beseiju worse. I don't think it's a card that we can run, just because of the fact that, like I said, the Scrylands aren't seeing play. So the fact that we can't really utilize the dual land, the swamp, or the forest, the basic land types in this card, it just means that we probably won't play this either. That being said, like if you want to play one, maybe, and if you have like a graveyard type synergy deck, if you're like a Delirium based deck, then maybe. But without fetch lands, the ceiling on this card is so low. Case of the Stash Skeleton is an interesting card. It's a 1 and a black. When an ETB, you should make a 2/1, and it has Menace and can't block. And then to solve it, you have no suspected skeleton. So essentially, you have to unsolve the skeleton, which I don't know if there's a way to really do that. That's in a playable manner, or the 2/1 just dies. So then when the 2/1 dies, at the beginning of the end step, you can pay 2 and sacrifice this case, and then you essentially demonic tutor. So this card does a lot. And when I first read this, I was like, this card, makes a body, and then when you lose the body, you essentially can demonic tutor. So it's a lot of card advantage, and it's card advantage in the sense that like you can tutor, which is really, really powerful. I think it's just one of those things where in these mid-range matchups is where you kind of want it, but it's kind of awkward because the 2/1 can't really block. The menace is nice in the aggro perspective. I think this is a card that is probably better in like a sacrifice build, or like one of those like zombie builds where you have a sack outlet, you sacrifice a skeleton, and you can tutor for something. In that worst case, it's just a 2 mana 2/1 with menace, and it's an aggro deck at heart, right? So those type of like mono black or Rakdos strategies, I think this card is better suited for. I kind of want to try this just because of the fact that like I said, a tutor is so powerful, and this is a 2-for-1 in a sense. So it takes a little bit of work essentially, but um, at the end of the day, it's a 2 mana 2/1 where they don't really want to block it either, and they don't really want to kill it. So it's like it's really awkward for the opponent. These Punisher type style of cards is never really great, but this might be potentially be an exception just because the ceiling on this card is so high because of the fact that you can tutor for something. Long Goodbye, essentially a mono black Abrupt Decay. It's one in a black, can't be countered, like Abrupt Decay. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less, similar to Abrupt Decay, but doesn't. It's not a non-land effect. So this will never replace Abrupt Decay just because of the fact that we can tag, which the oven. We can tag these enchantments. We can tag beat up the beanstalk, etc. etc. So like. The versatility of Abrupt Decay is nice. This might be in Rakdos if you really need that type of effect. But the fact that we can tag more than just creatures or planeswalkers, that's where like Abrupt Decay is really powerful, right? Cease and Desist. Can't ignore the Abzan split card here. But we're gonna really look at the ceased side of things, and I guess Desist because you can hardcast it for 6. For the C side, it's an instant. It's one in a hybrid Golgari. Instant, exile up to 2 target creatures from a single graveyard. Target player gains 2 life and draws a card. So this is similar to Cling to Dust. But with Cling to Dust, it's kind of awkward because you have, if you exile a creature, is it Phoenix? You only gain the 3 life, and you don't get to draw the card. In contrast, if you exile an instance or sorcery, you can't, you don't get the life, but you do get the cantrip. So Cease, you get to pay that extra 1 mana, and you kind of get both worlds. And what's cool is you get to exile 2 cards. So this is where you can exile 2 Phoenixes. You get to gain 2 life, where your life total really matters, and you get to draw a card. So this is cool. I don't think it's playable because for 2 mana you'd rather just play like an unlicensed hearse, and you can just proactively have it in play, and then you just never have to hold up 2 mana, right? That being said, like, this is versatile because for 6 mana you can destroy all artifacts or enchantments, and that may be useful against like Animatic, right? And this is where if a Cease, they have like Heliod, where you can like return an enchantment from the graveyard to the hand or top of the deck. Like 6 mana is a lot, but this is where in that matchup I feel like games go long, and being able to destroy everything is interesting from on their side. So this is again just one of those cards. I keep saying these for a lot of cards from these new sets, where it's kind of like a nice tool to have in our back pocket, and then kind of just go on from there. Minimal investment. It's kind of a cool take. This card again does a lot. The 2 life draw and exile 2 cards instead of just the 1 out of Cling is interesting. So this card, that's why I just wanted to point this out as maybe other people might not. Rubblebelt Maverick is a 1 mana 1/1, so it's kind of underwhelming. I think this is a card where if you really wanted to, go Delirium route, there's Surveil 2, and I think this is a card that I think looks better than it really looks initially, just because of the fact that in our colors we don't have much filtering, and then when we get the one card that gives us filtering, as in Sentinel of the Nameless City, maps just increased my win rate so much, just because of the fact that we see a Thoughtseize in our opponent's helmet, you just mill it. Oh, I have a Fatal Push on top of the deck, but we're against control, I just mill it. Oh, I really need a land, I'm just going to put a land on top. There's a reason why like Ponder, Preordain, Serum Visions, all those cards are played in Legacy and Modern. So this is kind of like our Preordain, right? We get to Surveil too. But the thing is we don't get to draw a card, but we get to make a 1/1. And then when it's in the graveyard, because it has a fragile body, exile it and then just pump a creature. And we know how good that is with map tokens, right? Like turning our graveyard Trespasser into a 4/4 and outgrowing or opposing Graveyard Trespassers is huge. So this is a card that I think is better than it looks. Is it going to see play? I think it depends on how well you utilize the Surveil too. Um, but like I said, like the filtering that you get right off the bat for 1 mana, you get the body, you get to commit to the battlefield right away. I think this card might be better than we might initially think. This might be better in other like cat oven type decks, like a Golgari food deck maybe, where you'll be able to utilize a Surveil 2 better. I feel like if you're in a mid range deck that doesn't utilize a Surveil 2, I don't see the ceiling high enough for this type of card. But I think if you're in a mid range deck that is graveyard dependent, I think this card is that does a lot, right? It's a preordain that fuels your graveyard. The last card that I'm going to talk about in this video is Urgent Necropsy. It's a 2 black and a green instant, where you get to collect evidence for X as an additional cost, and then the total amount of value is going to be equal to the amount of evidence you collected. And then from there, you get to destroy up to 1 target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. So essentially, you have to delve cards out of your graveyard, and then the total CMC that you have has to be more than the targets that you have for this card. Um, so let's say there's like a Fable, let's say there's a Shieldred, and let's say there's like a Bank Buster, right? So that's 9. So you need to exile a total of 9 total CMC out of your graveyard on top of casting it for 4 to destroy all 3. And this is why I think this is a type of card that is such a high ceiling, but also a very, very, very low floor. Because A, you need graveyard to work with, and they already play graveyard trespassers. You need cards in your graveyard, so this isn't something that you can just slam, right? But that being said, I think when you need like an emergency button, something like Extinction Event, um, you know, it's Extinction Event can be kind of awkward because you can either A, that you won't tag their whole board, or B, you'll tag some of your own board, right? So I'm like specifically thinking about Rakdos or Rakdos Sacrifice, mid range or Sacrifice, and like that's where like this is a card where it's just like the disparity between a floor and the ceiling on this card is so high, because if your opponent has 2 creatures, you can't tag both of them. But if your opponent has a diverse, board of, a creature, enchantment, artifact, this card's insane because it's a 3-for-1. And it's one of those cards where, like, when you collect evidence, you'll be able to do it as the game goes along, and that's what happens in Rakdos Sacrifice and Rakdos Midrange. So those games go long. So, like, will you be able to collect evidence and tag, like a Fable and a Bank Buster? Probably. You're probably able to have 5. We have 9 if you want to tag a Shieldred. Probably, right? It's just a matter of like, will you have it? So I think the main concern is the fact that this is 4 mana. If it costs 3, I would be all on board on this card. The fact that it costs 4 is really, really expensive. And at the end of the day, like in these type of mid-range matchups, I'd rather have if I'm dedicating this towards like Rakdos, I'd rather have like a proactive card like Ren and Realmbreaker than a reactive card that like you're hoping it lines up nicely. And I feel like as a mid-range deck, you're already hoping that your cards line up nicely, and this is like you're hoping this lines up nicely, and you have all these other stipulations to make it worth it. So it's a card that I'm keeping an eye on. I definitely see the ceiling on it. Like tagging, like I said, tagging a Bank Buster, a Fable, and a Shieldred is just like insane, right? That's how you catch up. But on the flip side, just 4 mana is a lot for a removal spell. There's a reason why I only like board in 1 Terra Sunder and not both, because if I need to tag a Shieldred, I can, but I would prefer not to. Like if I can tag a Bank Buster on the draw on turn 2, that's kind of ideal for a Terra Sunder, which is why I only want to run 1. And this costs 4 mana, so like by then they already probably gotten value off the Bank Buster. So that'll do it for me. I'll probably test a couple cards. Like I said, I'll probably try Massacre Girl. I might try the Skeleton Case just for fun. Those are the 2 cards that really stand out to me as kind of like a proactive card. These reactive cards really just depend on the meta, right? So it's not something I'm just gonna slot it in. It's just like, well, you really have to see where the meta settles once the set's released, and then you can kind of adapt from there, right? And that's where you can really justify if you need to play pick your poison, right? But these proactive threats like Massacre, you can just play it, try it out, and see how it works. So if I missed anything in the video, please let me know. If there's any kind of feedback that you want to provide on this type of content, if you like this type of content, type into the comments. I'd really appreciate it. Like the video. I'm really, really close to 1,000 subs, so I would really appreciate it if you haven't already to subscribe to the video. Like I said, I'll probably be producing more Pioneer content because I base this whole set review on it, and that's kind of where it's really fun with a smaller card pool. You'll most likely have cards that impact, Pioneer with a smaller card pool, right? So I really appreciate everyone for watching. If you made this far, and hope to catch everyone next time. Take care. Bye.